Hi everybody and welcome to the YouTube channel. Thanks for taking a look. Today we're going to be doing a short demonstration of how to use the color background or color bar based on alert condition studies to detect when certain conditions are true. So what we're going to be doing with this series, by the way, is taking a lot of customer and prospective customer feedback and incorporating it into this playlist. So if you have something specifically you're looking to see done in Sierra, or if you have a question or you're stuck somewhere, please don't hesitate to let me know. You can leave a comment in the video or you can send me an email directly. All of my contact information is in the description of the video and my email address is at the beginning and the end of the video. It's just pz@infinityfutures.com. Okay. So what we're basically looking at here on the screen are three nearly identical charts. All right. And what's separating the charts is not the time frame, the indicators, or the market, but rather how the result is being displayed. So what I'm going to do first is focus on the one on the left, and I'll explain what's up here, and then we'll show you how these other two differ. Okay, so the first one, I'll just maximize it. What I was looking to do with this example, this is based on a customer asking me a question about, how to do this on the program, is we're basically trying to detect when a moving average crossover is occurring with another condition applied. And that other condition is that the market is above another longer term moving average. So in this case, we're using 8 and 21 EMAs. So the 8 EMA is the blue line, the 21 EMA is the magenta line, and then the gray line here, this black line, this is a 50 period SMA. So when you're trying to do a moving average crossover, one of the things you typically want to look at is you want to look at the crossover in the context of a larger trend. So you, as the trader, have to define what are you going to use to justify the crossover being valid. So you have to pick something. In this case, my customer was looking at a 50 period SMA. So that's what I am using in this example. So what this person was looking for was the 8 EMA to cross the 21 EMA, but the condition would only be visible or valid if the market was above the 50 period SMA as well. Now, the idea with this study, for those of you who are newer to Sierra, is not just to give you an extra thing to look at. It's really to help you declutter and simplify everything. So if I were to right click on the chart and go to studies, I could actually hide the moving averages themselves. If really all you care about is the end result of the condition, this is a really great way to help clean up the chart, have a little bit less information displayed, and still give you the information you might need to incorporate into your trading decision, especially in the last few seconds before you actually decide to get into the trade. So the objective is to reduce decision fatigue, reduce clutter, keep your eyes focused, not have you looking at 25 indicators that you're not actually using to make your decisions. This hide option here is very useful for something like this. So the first thing that we need to do is identify what aspects of the moving average we care about. So you'll notice that every study has an ID number. The study moving averages, which is basically 3 moving averages in one study, is ID number 1. If we click on settings and go to subgraphs at the top, you'll see that each one of these has an SG number next to it, SG1, SG2, SG3. So the 8 EMA is going to be SG1, the 21 EMA is going to be SG2, and then the 50 SMA is going to be SG3. A lot of times what I will do, especially if I'm doing something that involves lots of subgraphs or multiple studies, is I will actually jot these down in something like Notepad and keep it off to the side so that I can easily reference it later instead of having to come back here and remind myself what these are. All right, so I'll move that off the screen for now. But basically the way we're going to refer to these is ID1.SG1 for the first moving average, ID1.SG2 for the second, and ID1.SG3 for the third. And that's why I have them displayed like this. So this would be the way we're going to tell the program to refer to the 8, the 21, and the 50. All right. Now, to actually create this code, so to speak, and I use that term very loosely, this is really not coding. It's just very, very basic greater than, less than, syntax with a few operators that we can teach you how to use. The way you're going to do that is by adding the study color background based on alert condition. So it's just one of the studies you can add, like a moving average, okay, color background based on alert condition. You add it, and then in the settings section, the first thing you'd want to do is, okay, if this is going to be a bullish signal, what color do you want? So I'm choosing this light blue color. So I just put that in. And then in the alerts tab, this is where the code goes. So when you look at something like this for the first time, it can look a little intimidating. It looks like you have to be an expert to do something like this, but you really don't have to. It is actually quite simple, and you just do it in pieces. You just have to think through in your mind and write down perhaps or type out what the conditions are that you need to use. So the way that I wrote this out is I'm thinking, okay, I'm looking at my inputs and I'm thinking, all right, what do I want to happen? Well, there's an operator that Sierra offers called cross from below. There's also cross from above. So in this case, what I'm looking for is the 8 to cross the 21 from below. So the way that I would write this out is I would say cross from below, and then you open a parentheses and you do the first thing, comma, the second thing. So the first thing is what's crossing the second thing. So in this case, the 8 EMA is the first thing. So ID1.SG, excuse me, SG1 like this, comma, ID1.SG2. So this is the first condition, is ID1.SG1 has to cross ID1.SG2 from below. That is the crossover itself. Okay, so that's one piece of the condition. But there's another part of the condition, and that is that we need the market price to be greater than the value of the 50 period SMA, which is ID1.SG3 right here. So what I'm going to do then is add a second condition, which is going to be C, and I'll explain in a minute, is greater than ID1.SG3. C is what represents the closing price of a bar or the current price of the current bar. So when you're looking back in time at prior bars, if you use letter C, that means the closing price of the bar, uh, not like the open or the high or the low, which also have their own separate operators that can be referred to. But you're always going to be using C when you're talking about, okay, the close of the bar is greater than this. Or if we're on the current bar, it's whatever the current price is. So these are the two conditions that we need to combine together. So you have them here separately. All you really need to do is put them next to each other, separated by a comma, and put the whole thing in a big parentheses with and in the front. So what the and condition means is that both conditions inside the parentheses, or all conditions that are inside the parentheses, need to be true. This is one of the conditions here, which is the crossover, and this is another one of the conditions here, which is the fact that the market's above the 50 period SMA. So when you put them together like this, and these conditions can get long. I mean, you might have 4 or 5 indicators with different subgraphs you're referring to. If you do them piece by piece like this, you'll see that it actually is not that complicated. It just looks intimidating because you get the impression that someone who's doing this is just typing this out, in their mind like a hacker. It doesn't work that way. I always do it piecemeal, one by one by one, and then I just add them together. And in this case, we're using an and condition, which means everything inside the parentheses has to be true. So when you put that in place, I'll just move that off the screen for now, and you hit apply, you're going to get an immediate response. So I'm just going to hide the study for a second so you can see what it looks like without it. Okay. So there's my moving averages back, and notice that the color background study is hidden, so my blue conditions are gone. All right, when I apply the study with hide unchecked, which is defaulted to be unchecked, this is the visual response. Okay, now what I then do is I actually just duplicate the study. So instead of having to redo all the text, a lot of times when you're doing long and short conditions, you're just flipping over a couple of words or directions of like a greater than or less than sign or something like that. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. So what I like to do is I just hit the duplicate button right here, which makes a copy of the exact same study. And then in the settings section, in the subgraphs tab, this is our short condition. So I'm going to use like this different color. And then in the alerts tab, we just had to flip two things. Remember the first condition we had was cross from above, or excuse me, cross from below. Well, I just changed it to cross from above because now we're looking for this opposite condition. We want the 8 to cross the 21 from above, which is bearish. And we also, instead of the current price being above that 50, we want it to be below the 50. So notice I just flipped the greater than sign over to a less than sign. So a lot of times when you're creating these conditions, you're just flipping a couple of words or letters or a greater than or less than sign or two to the opposite direction, and then you just apply it and magically it comes up. So again, if I were to hide the study as if it weren't there and apply it, you're going to see that sell signal go away. Okay, there it goes. But if I didn't have hide unchecked and you were to go ahead and apply this after making those changes, you just push apply and then you're going to get that result. So this is a really simple way to utilize the power of this program. This can get quite complicated in a good way. I mean, there's so much you can do with it that can help you clear off the screen and combine these filters into one sort of giant filter that can hopefully speed up that intuitive decision making process while you're in the midst of deciding whether or not to get into a trade or stay in a trade. Or you can use these to create conditions where the conditions are totally unfavorable and it's a good sign to stay out of a position, for example, as well. All right, so that's the first chart that we had. Now, what I then did is I actually used the exact same formulas, okay, the exact same chart. So I just right click, duplicate chart, okay, it made a copy of the chart. And in the study section here, you'll see that we used the exact same code, except we used a different study called color bar based on alert condition. So here's color background, which is what we used before. This is color bar based on alert condition, which is what's on this chart. And you'll notice that the only difference is that instead of the red background for the sell signal, I actually have this magenta color bar for the sell signal, okay, color bar based on alert condition. And then here's a blue one which represents a buy signal. So here's a buy signal on the first chart, which is the color background, and then here's a buy signal on the second one, which is color bar. Now, what some people ask is, how do I achieve, this kind of look, where instead of having the background color, maybe that's distracting for you, or the color bar hides the color of the candle, and you don't like that, you'd rather have some sort of other visual representation that the condition is true. Well, in that case, you can actually use the color bar based on alert condition, but you can change some of the inputs so that it gives you this behavior instead of just coloring the entire bar. So you're still using the color bar based on alert condition, and watch this carefully because this is the one part of this that is easy to forget how to do unless you do it a few times. So color bar based on alert condition in settings, in the subgraphs tab, you're going to change the draw style from color bar to whatever you want. So in this case, for the buy signal, I choose to use arrow up. So I'm using a draw style of arrow up. But you can't just apply the draw style there without changing something else. It's got to be you got to select this first. And then in the settings and inputs tab, there are two things that you need to make sure or actually three things you need to make sure you do. The first is this output condition when true. This is defaulted to 1.0, which basically refers to a binary condition, like the bar is colored or it's not colored. But in this case, we're not actually using the bar color, we're using a different input. So you're going to change this to use input data. And then these two numbers here are the next things you want to do. These represent sort of where you want the signal to be visible. So what I was doing here is I'm using this percentage input, and I use negative 25, which means it's going to put this negative 25% off the low. So the negative 25 is a reference to how far away from the low of the bar this arrow is going to appear. If I were to change this to say negative 75, watch what happens to that arrow. Okay, it's going to go lower. Okay, so this is personal preference. Doesn't have to be 25 or whatever, 50. But if you're going to do something that you want sort of pointing upward and it's kind of representing a buy signal, my gut would say that you're probably going to want to use an arrow up of some kind or something similar, and you're going to want it to be below the candle. Okay, so I'll just put this back to negative 25 for now, just so we can see that. All right, see how it shifts again. Now, for the other signal, the sell signal, you would just similarly change the subgraph to arrow down. Okay, so instead of color bar, this says arrow down. And in the settings and inputs tab, notice that I've got a positive number here for the 25, and we're using the high. So there's a couple of sell signals that just happened. One of them was up here. You can see this magenta arrow. Okay, and then down here, you can see one that actually just happened since we've been doing the video. Okay, so you've got a crossover. You've got crossover from above. We're below the 50 SMA. So this arrow is now appearing. And the reason it's appearing there is because we've got 25 and high selected, as well as, remember, this use input data also needs to be selected instead of 1.0. So again, if I were to change this to, say, positive 100, watch what happens to this magenta arrow here and this one here. Okay, just push apply and see they pop way up. Okay, so it's just a function of how far this is extended from the bar. Normally I use 25 or 50, but it just depends on how far away you want these to appear. Okay, so essentially this program allows you to do some really neat things. You can refer to different pieces of different studies. So if there is something you as a user, if you're starting to think, okay, how could I apply this to, my own charts or my own system, start thinking about the studies that you're using and the aspects of those studies that are most important. Because a lot of times what you'll find is you have all these indicators on the chart. There's really a couple things you're really focused on. And a lot of the other stuff is, more kind of sidelined. And I'm not sure if you agree with me or not, but I do personally believe that if you have all that stuff visible, even if you think you're not paying attention to it, you really are chewing away at your ability to make decisions as the day goes on. I think decision fatigue in the trading world is a very real thing. I think that this is a great way to combat it. You just have to be able to outline or logically define the conditions you look for. So if you are thinking something like, all right, if the market goes into resistance, I want to get short. That's not something you can tell the chart to do. You need to be able to define what resistance means. Okay, but if you're talking about something like, okay, I want to know when the CCI is below negative 200 and the market is crossing its value area low in the same bar, that is something you could easily define because those are either true or untrue conditions that are very easy to specify for the chart or to the chart program. So start thinking a little bit about the studies you use and the aspects of confluence that are meaningful to you. So if you have, when this, and this are all happening at the same time, that is kind of where I think my edge is. All right, if you believe that, start inventorying what those are. It may surprise you. You might force yourself to clear a lot of the stuff off your screen that you realize you're not actually using to make these decisions. So it's a great program. Infinity does great support for Sierra. I'm really looking forward to building out this playlist further. So if you have comments, questions, please comment below in the YouTube comments. If there's something specifically you'd like to see an example of, just email me directly. Again, my name is Patrick. My email address you'll see on the next page on the closing screen is pz@infinityfutures.com. We would certainly be happy to hear from you. So thank you again. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day.